welcome everyone to the MCG. Thanks for coming out today. I would like to officially welcome Paul Roos to the Melbourne Football Club as senior coach. We're absolutely delighted that Paul has agreed to this role for at least 2 years. Paul's reputation in the game and his standing was obvious. A premiership coach, 356 games. His appointment was the most significant news for this club for a very, very long time. From a club perspective, I'd like to thank the coaching selection panel, led by Peter Jackson, who has worked tirelessly through this process. I think there's no doubt that his professionalism and persistence has helped to secure Paul Roos as senior coach of this football club. So welcome, Paul. Over to you.
Before I hand it over to questions, I'll make a few comments. I think there's been a bit of running commentary going over the past 6 or 7 weeks anyway, but maybe fill in some gaps. When Peter first spoke to me 12 weeks ago, there was very little interest in being a senior coach. I was extremely happy working for the Swans, working for Fox and doing some new stuff. A couple of significant things changed over that period. Firstly, I had a contract that ran out at the Swans. I caught up with Andrew Ireland, and probably at the end of that meeting I realised that my time at Sydney had come to an end. And I'd like to acknowledge the Swans. I'd like to thank them. It's been an amazing journey for me at Sydney, which started in 1995 as a player. And I enjoyed my time as a player and equally as a coach. And I think I've left an incredible organisation, and I'll be forever grateful to Andrew and Richard in particular for giving me the opportunity to coach the Sydney Swans, and I certainly wish them all the best. And John Longmire, I've texted them this morning to let them know of the decision. Peter is a very dogged character and probably came in the back pocket, to be perfectly frank. So he kept on asking and asking, and we kept on speaking and speaking. And I guess through the discussions and some of the dialogue and inquired about how the succession plan worked at Sydney and all those sorts of things. And then I think one of the other turning points was when Peter came to me and asked, would you be interested in heading the organisation and then handing it over to someone else? And that really sparked the interest in terms of where I was going in my career and what I was looking to do. And that's really when I started the process of becoming the coach. And part of that process was meeting the players. And that was another significant moment in moving forward for me, meeting the players. Very honest, and I was very impressed with the group, and certainly gave me a clear direction of where the club was heading. I also had a chance to meet with Dave Nissen, who's the ex-fitness guy at the Sydney Swans. And the great thing for me was the message was really consistent, from Peter to the players to Dave Nissen. And I think probably the final piece of the puzzle was meeting Glenn earlier this week. And I was really clear, I think the final piece with Peter and Glenn is this had to work for the Melbourne Football Club. They have to be wedded to a succession plan, and something will start, I guess early next week with Peter and the board and with Glenn. They have to be wedded to it. This is about the Melbourne Football Club, this is not necessarily about me, and they had to be wedded to what I was going to bring to the football club. So the final meeting happened with Glenn, and we spoke candidly as Peter and I have all the way through the process. And today, I'd just like to say I'm extremely excited about being introduced as a Melbourne coach. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of years, and really looking forward to setting a direction for the players and setting a direction for the football club and setting some really high standards. And I can't wait to get started. Hopefully get started on Monday and get to talk to the players a bit later on. I've met a few of them, but I'm certainly very excited and looking forward to it. What is going to be a huge challenge, there's no doubt about that. I think one thing about with all the boys, they certainly haven't sugarcoated it. I know exactly what I'm coming into. Peter's been very honest, the players have been very honest, and I know it's going to be a very difficult job, but I'm very excited about being here, so thank you.
How will the succession plan work, Paul? Have you got a period of time in mind and a person?
Not a person, and maybe I'll defer to Peter and Glenn, but what we'll do is probably identify 2 or 3 assistants that want a senior coaching role, interview them over the next period of time, and appoint them as the senior assistant coach and head coach in 2 or 3 years' time. Maybe I'll defer to Peter in relation to that.
I think the answer, Paul's terms are 2 years with an option for 1 year, so he's here for at least 2 years, perhaps 3. We've got to change the culture and develop the standards and leadership that this footy club needs right across the board. And what we've agreed to here pretty much fits into what I'm trying to do myself as CEO. We love to get success, but ultimate success is probably a few years away yet. And I think what needs to change first, right across the organisation, is how we do business, both in football and other areas. And we're trying to build succession plans as CEO. We're trying to build succession plans now with the coach. And I think Paul didn't want to commit to a 5-year. I was never going to get him if we started talking about coming for a 5-year journey. He's been through that before. I understand that. I've been through it myself. It's a hard gig to come back into footy and deal with that hard slug all the time. But I think, if we're sitting here in 5 years' time in the grandstand watching someone else achieve ultimate success, that's fantastic. What we want to do is try and build the culture and leadership and standards and expectations of this whole football club, and there's no better man to do it from the football side than him. You look at the two great clubs of the modern era, being, I suppose, Geelong and Sydney in terms of on-field performance. We needed to get people out of those sort of cultures who knew what great football cultures are. What better man than to turn around the Sydney Footy Club in the first place? So it's fantastic for us to be able to have him and get him to lay the foundations for football for the next decade.
So, Paul, you didn't feel like you had 5 years left in you, the whole journey?
No, I think as I said, Peter and I had a lot of discussions, and I think one of the questions Peter asked me at one stage was, what's going to change your mind? I said to him, look, I don't really know, and when I look back, they're the real two pivotal moments for me, the ending of the association with Sydney, which has been an incredible association. I've really valued that. And when we discussed the succession plan, how it worked at Sydney, and I was extremely positive, and we're seeing it work with Nathan now at Collingwood. And that really got me interest going on where I want to go with leadership and culture and values and behaviours and all those sorts of things. And then the next stage was meeting the players, and I think, I want to set the direction for the club. I don't necessarily love to hold another cup up, but for me it's about setting these guys apart, so they know that for the next, obviously, when any coach gets appointed for 2 years or 3 years, you're not sure who's going to be the next coach. These boys will know over the next 5 to 7 years who their senior coaches will be. It'll be me and then someone else. And I think that's a real positive for the players to have a really clear understanding of where this football club's going. And that's the thing that really appealed to me, to get in, do the hard yards, take a few knocks along the way, which is fine, work with an outstanding play group, and try and set some standards, and try and win some games of football.
Paul, can you be sure in 2 or 3 years' time that you won't get another taste for it again?
Look, I'm really clear in where I was going. I guess I wasn't intending to coach, and I think, as I said, when Peter asked me what's going to change my mind, I can only sort of answer the questions that I've tried to do in the here and the now. This is exciting for me. I'm really excited about looking as a short-term, but it might be a longer-term association in some other way. But certainly from a coaching point of view, I'm very excited about working with the players, very excited about getting a good group of coaches around the boys, and very excited about setting a path, and then happy to hand it over. And if there's success in the 2 or 3 years, well and good. If there's not, there will be, I guarantee there will be after that. And if it's someone else that takes the glory, that's fine by me.
Did you meet with anyone from the AFL in the process of making the decision?
No, I didn't, no.
And what do you think of the list?
Well, look, I need to get into the club, and I need to see the way they train, and I need to, understand each and every player. All I can say is that I think 8 or 9 boys that I did meet with, I was extremely impressed. Look, they're a 2-win team, and 56%. So I have a clear understanding. I think they're a better team than that. And I said to the boys at the time, I don't know, how many wins, what that means, but I think the percentage for me is probably more relevant. We need to get competitive. 56% is an unacceptable percentage. So that's probably my goal, is to make them as competitive as we possibly can, as quickly as we possibly can. And I know in the research that I've done that I've got a group that will work hard, and I think that as a coach gives me great confidence to walk into a footy club with a good group of guys that want to work hard and want to be successful.
You need a priority pick, to get that done.
Yeah, that'd be great if you got one. Who's got that?
Paul, you walk in Monday morning.
Yep.
What are the first priorities for you? Very short term. What needs?
Yeah,
to
I
be
think
done?
short term is I've had a brief chat to Todd and Josh just about the list and who might be going, who's coming. I think a couple of priorities are Cole Sylvie and Jack Watts. I think I really want them to stay and I want them to be part of the football club. And hopefully they do. I had a chat to Cole just before and he's heading overseas and I think I don't know where Jack's in the room now. I don't want to put any pressure on him, but I'll see Jack later on. But that's a real priority for me to get those two quality boys linked to the club. And then after that, who have they spoken to, who haven't they spoken to? Then sitting down with Peter. I think one thing about a succession plan and getting a senior assistant, they need to. A lot of assistants don't want to be senior coaches, so at this stage, we're not sure who those applicants will be for that role. Obviously, other roles that need to be filled within the football department. So they're probably the immediate things that we get to work on straight away.
Peter, where do things sit with the current football staff who are still on contract and things like that? Have you been able to tidy all of that up? People like Neil Craig, for example, and Josh Hunt?
We've said from the very beginning that if any structural changes that happen with this football club, we'll honour existing contracts, and they don't know where they stand at the moment.
You've got a secret football in mind.
No, we haven't got to that stage yet. That's the last domino. I mean, I came in here with a view that we needed a new chairman. We got him. We needed a new head of commercial. We got him. He starts on the 14th of October. George DeCrepney. Need a new coach. We got him. So we've got the fourth one to come. So we'll work out the structures. And to be fair, I think probably when I thought that back in May, I didn't realistically expect that this gentleman was going to be sitting here today. So when you get a guy of the calibre of Roosie in your footy club to head up your footy department, you possibly change your feelings a bit about what that head of football looks like and what the structure under a guy like this might look like. So I'll think about that over the weekend and see where we go with that.
Paul, have you got a recruiting strategy?
Look, I think it's looking at the list firstly and identifying. I've probably had a closer look at the boys over the last couple of weeks and last week in particular and looking at strengths and weaknesses. I think everyone would acknowledge the weaknesses are in the midfield. We need to get midfield depth and we need to get quality midfielders. Equally, I think there's some really good young talent within the team. So I'll need to sit down with Todd and Josh just to work out who they have spoken to, who they haven't spoken to. What are we going to do with the priority pick that Steve-O just gave us? So thanks for that, mate. So what we're going to do with that. So look, there's a fair bit to talk about in a short space of time and just to get a feel of where Todd and Josh and Peter want to take the club as well.
You've written extensively about your philosophy is to trade a lot and get out of early, well, not get out of early draft picks, but that's a really big way of getting stars into your side. I mean, would pick two and pick, if you get a priority pick, would you use them to trade?
Philosophically, I think there's some talent on the list. I'd be happy to trade pick two, philosophically, but I'd need to sit down and, because I think we need, some immediate talent. We need some immediate talent in the midfield. We've had some good early draft picks here. I think, philosophically, I wouldn't be against, trading pick two, or if we did get a priority pick, I don't know what the AFL's view on that, whether you can trade or can't trade it, but certainly we'd be more than you can. Yeah, we'd be happy to put that back in the mix, and maybe that helps the AFL make a decision that we'd be probably happy to put that, out to tender if you like, and say, look, if anyone's out there wants to pick one, give us a couple of good players.
Why do you deserve a priority pick?
I think if you look at the performance of Melbourne over the last 7 years, we've won 34% of our 34 games in 7 years. In the last 4 years, we've won 22. 6 of those were against the 2 expansion teams. We got beaten by the 2 expansion teams this year. Of the other 16 games that we won, there was one game that we beat a top 8 side, which was Sydney out here, ironically, in 2010.
2010, it was 73 points.
He remembers it well. And since then, we've not beaten a top 8 side. And some of the sides we beat at that time, they had names like Richmond. But Richmond were 15th when we beat them. They're now playing in the finals on Sunday. We beat Port Adelaide, who was 16th, and they're now in the finals. And we beat Club Fremantle when it was 11th. It's now a serious contender for the year. for the premiership. So I mean, if you look at the track record, the actual performance, if you guys dig into it and do the analysis, you'll find it's a very powerful argument compared to when Collingwood got their priority picks, Hawthorn got their priority picks under a different system, I grant, but they did. The issue for us, to expose the elephant in the room, the issue for us is what happened earlier this year with the tanking investigation. It's the sensitivity of it. We understand that, we get it. And unfortunately that may cloud the issue, but the reality of it, you guys go and do it yourself. You do the investigation on this club's performance over the last 4 to 7 years and you'll agree, I think it's a pretty powerful argument if you want to get a club up and about and start contributing its worth to the competition.
And the AFL told you that, Ben? The AFL told you that your prize as a football club are a contributing factor?
No, I say that. I've said that all along. I mean, I've said I think it's sad that Melbourne play Richmond, two rivals that don't like each other very much, in front of 39,000 people at G. And when we played Hawthorn, it was in front of 28,000 people. Stephen Goff standing up in the back of the corner there, and the MCC's been fantastic to the Melbourne Football Club, but we cost Richmond probably 100 grand that day, and we probably cost Goffey 50 grand. And then the broadcasters don't want to play to a stadium that's half full. They don't want people turning it off because we're not competitive, the 56%. I mean, I've always said since I got re-involved in this footy club that it's, we need to, fixing this footy club will provide a return to the whole industry. It's not just about the Melbourne Football Club and the parochialism of the Melbourne Footy Club. It's a whole industry thing. And we are a drag on the industry. So that's not the AFL, that's my view.
Peter, where are you at in terms of a priority pick? Clearly, you know for a fact that you can trade for it. You've done your research.
We put the submission in, but it's in the hands of the AFL. The AFL Commission make a decision at the end of the year. So, where we end up with it, it's in their hands.
I mean, any of the other 17 clubs are against you getting priority.
It's not, but that's why we have an independent commission. That's what they do. That's their role in life, is to make decisions in the best interest of the competition. And the game's flourished since they have, so it's not a question of what the other 17 clubs think. And if we were one of those 17 looking at another club, I mean, that's you would respect the AFL Commission's independence. They took decisions about Gold Coast and Greater Western Sydney and draft picks, and everyone understood why they did that, and it's penalised clubs during that time. But we all took that on the chin because we knew it was for the greater good of the competition. So it's not really a question of what the other 17 clubs think. It's a question of what your independent commission thinks and how it will run the organisation. But, I mean, don't take my word for it. You guys go and do the analysis on our performance. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's a fairly powerful argument.
The analysis has been done, though, on the 6 or 7 first-round draft picks that have left the club in the last few years. Does that not count for anything?
I don't know. I don't think so, personally. I think
Roos, you picked your best team, the Herald Sun, a month ago for round 1. Can you go into that one?
I need to have a look at it again.
Oh yeah, what's on a wing? You still agree with that?
Look, my commitment to these boys is to make them the absolute best player that they can be. I mean, you talked about early draft picks. I believe there's talent here, and what's happened in the past I have no idea about. My commitment to Jack is to make him the best possible player that he can be, and that's to every single one of the boys. I mean, that's what the coach's role is. That's why we exist, and that's probably one of the only reasons we exist, is to make every single player on the list as good a player as they can be. So I'll sit down with Jack and hope that he does stay, and then we'll talk about a role and give him a role, and give him a role that he thinks he can do, and give him a role that we think can benefit the footy club.
Peter, you spoke about, Paul spoke about how he's already talked to Cole Silvey, he talked to Jack Watts, talked about trading, getting talent in. The effect of having Paul now as coach in terms of keeping players and attracting the talent that you want, playing talent that you want to get in the club, just having Paul on board?
Glenn summed it up. I mean, this is probably the most significant thing. If you look at that board behind me, this is probably the most significant thing since that fellow called Ron Barassi Jr. over there actually left the club in 1965. I mean, you beat the judge of that. There's nothing more significant this footy club's achieved in the last 20 or 30 years than appointing a guy of Paul Roos' calibre and experience. I think the impact on the football club's going to go way beyond what you just asked, Roger. I think, we've had 12,000 members walk away from this club in the last 2 years, 6,000 each year. I know why they have. We all know why they have. They're frustrated. They want success. We want them back. Of course, we want them back. So it extends out to them, extends out to supporters, extends to sponsors, extends to catering members. This club has just slowly declined, financially as well over the last 5-6 years. So, Roosie's going to make an impact beyond just the playing talent, I would hope. And I think the excitement that's around Melbourne this morning, now it's become official. I mean, the excitement last week when he said he was 50-50 was palpable, but the excitement this morning is just beyond belief, and it's just fantastic for this footy club.
And on that, since he said he was 50-50, what have you noticed? Like, if you had, how much feedback have you been getting from the
just hope that we would find the other 50%. And now that we've got it, the phones are just going crazy this morning. The staff's reaction when he's walked through the office to see him, some of that calibre come to our footy club. It's just fantastic reaction by everyone involved, and so he'll bring a hell of a lot to this football club.
Well, when did you finally make a decision that you were coming to Melbourne?
Look, it has been a steady process, and I've tried to be as open and honest as I have through the whole process. Definitively, I had a discussion with my family last Sunday night, and that was probably from a family point of view, they were all really positive. I mean, even they've been at different stages at different times, and my oldest boy, as soon as I hope I'm not talking out of school, I got a couple of text messages from a few of the players after I met with them, and I showed them to my son, and he said, "Dad, you've got to go and coach him." So he was sort of sold a while ago, and Tyler's here today. He's trying to get some New Balance gear and some other stuff, and he's already seagulled a footy over there, and probably get a hat before he leaves and all that sort of stuff. So he's now excited about coming down and playing. He's 18 next year, playing TAC Cup, and my wife's been really supportive. So look, it has been a process. Probably the final decision was made, after I met with Glenn, and just, as I said, I think the main thing I reinforce this has to be about the Melbourne Football Club and what's right for the Melbourne Football Club. And I think after meeting Glenn and speaking to Peter again on was that Tuesday morning, but it really wasn't finalised, I think, until probably yesterday.
And do you expect George Stone and Stephen Corbett to join you?
Look, I'm really respectful. There's a lot of talk about who will join me, but until I make a decision, it's unfair to talk to anyone else. And who's going to join? I can't offer jobs when I haven't got a job myself. So I think, hopefully we can assemble a quality staff, that gives these boys a chance to be the best possible players they can be.
Well, have you got any thoughts on the captaincy, whether it be open?
Look, I think more specifically on the two Jacks, Jack Grimes and Jack Trengo, I need to make them the best players they can be. And that's my priority. If that means them being captain, they'll be captain. If it means that they're not being captain, they won't be captain. But we touched on that briefly with the boys, but they'll be part of that process. But for me, it's about making the two boys the best possible players that they can be, and that's the number one priority.
And the senior assistant.
Sorry?
It'll be opened up, basically.
Well, I'm a strong believer in leading teams, and they work with the Swans, and that'll be the system. I've spoken to Peter and Glenn about that. That'll be the system we'll adopt and the players will get to know that. Some of them I think have worked with it as well. In that system, the players vote for their leadership group, and out of that, myself and the board and Peter will ratify the captain or captains. There's a process to go through, but the players. So before we know who the captain will be, we'll need to work out who the leadership group will be.
Senior assistant, Peter. So when that's announced, you're basically flagging that he'll be the next senior coach of the footy club.
Well, the board ultimately makes that decision, as it should under the Constitution. That's the correct protocol. We would bring someone in who we would hope would have that capacity to do that role and develop, and hopefully it would become seamless. So if we get the recruiting decision right and get the development right, and this isn't, we were running a coach selection process anyway, and succession planning at that time was a real potential, because if you took Paul Roos out of the equation, then you looked at what was in the marketplace, and there was always a possibility that you might get an experienced coach for a couple of years with a succession plan for a young. So this isn't a new concept. That Paul, that's how the conversation came up with him. So
is it risky? I mean, Paul, you were handing over to someone you knew very well in John, and the Collingwood thing was a bit dicey in a sense, but there was a relationship there that you won't have. I mean, you'll be taking your best educated punt.
Well, I think until we start the process, we don't know. I suspect we can get some real high quality for the
I
position.
suspect as a result of this press conference and Paul Roos as head coach putting it on the table, we're going to get some fairly decent applications by about 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Look, I'm sold on it. I think it's the way football's moving forward. I think we've seen the education. I mean, obviously the John thing I could speak, but let me distance myself from that. I mean, I think with Nathan and you see, his advancement perhaps compared to some of the other coaches that have come out, I certainly think in the right situation. Again, it has to be the right situation for the right club. It's not for everyone. But I think for the players, and hopefully the players would see that as a really exciting part of their future. They now know what their footy club is going to look like for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's really exciting from a player's point of view. And I think we will get some good applicants, and I think we'll come up with a very, very good candidate.
Paul, speaking of coaches, digging on one of the current coaches' contracts, Neil Craig, how well do you know him? And can you talk a bit about the fact that we're working pretty closely with him?
Well, look, to be fair, I really don't know. We need to sit down with Peter and...
No, look, I've spoken. Neil's been very clear under the situation since I asked him to take on the interim role. There were no promises where that would be, and if he didn't fit in the future, we would honour his contract. And so we've been very open about that since day one. He took that role on under that understanding, and we'll work out with him over the next few days what it looks like in the future. This gives me an opportunity actually to talk about Neil. We acknowledged him at the best and fairest last night, but it bears stating more publicly that he didn't have to do this. He took on an interim role with no promises and the possibility of his reputation and his feelings getting hurt in the process over the journey and what might end up at the end of it. But his professionalism and his dedication, his dignity, and his, as I said last night to the supporters, when he said he'd do it, he said, "I'll do it balls and all," and he's done it balls and all. And even with all the media commentary that happened last weekend when Paul sort of said he was moving 50-50, I mean, Craigie just faced up to that game last week, full of professionalism and dignity, and got the very best out of the team. So look, he's won enormous respect from these players, and that was acknowledged by individual players last night. He's been fantastic for this football club, and particularly over the last 12 weeks, and we owe him a debt of gratitude, there's no doubt about that.
Peter, just on the best and fairest last night, was there a temptation to wheel Paul out to the faithful?
No. All three of us talked about this very early. If it started to look like it was going to be positive, which was about Tuesday morning, then there was no way, because the best and fairest is about recognising the people who made contributions to the current year, and that would have been undignified to people like Neil Craig and coaching panels who, members of that who may not be part of the future. So it would have just been a completely inappropriate thing to do, and that's not how we want to be seen to do business in the future.
Paul, will you bring in Ray McLean? You talk about leading teams. Will you bring him in, or bring in some of his people?
I've had a discussion with Ray, and whether specifically Ray or not, and I've had a discussion with Peter and Len, and they're comfortable with that. So yeah, that'll be something we'll embark on. Absolutely. I mean, obviously we'll need to sit down with Ray and make sure it works for him as well, and make sure it works for the club. But that's certainly the intention.
Paul, it's been an incredibly tough year for supporters and fans. Some say it's been the toughest in history. What's your message to members or supporters who might be disenfranchised?
Well, look, there's no magic formula. I think that's, and one of the things I left the players with. I mean, this is about everyone. This is not just about me. This is not just about Peter or Glenn. I think to be a great football club, we need the players on board. We need the players working hard. We need everyone working hard at the football club. But as hard as it is, I guess it's difficult for me to talk about Melbourne because they've had a fair bit of pain in the past. But all I can say is moving forward, we're going to do the best possible thing we can for the club and for the players, and hopefully present a really good product on the field, bearing in mind where we're coming from. So, without a call to arms, I'd just say, look, it is going to be difficult, it's going to be hard, but get on board. I think it's exciting. I think there's a direction now for the football club. Hopefully the players are excited. Hopefully that we know where we're going. It might take a little while to get there, but we know where we're going. I think that's really important from a member's point of view, hopefully from a sponsor's point of view, and I'm 100% committed for at least the next 2 years to make sure this football club goes in the right direction.
On field call, what's achievable in those two years? It's probably a tough question to answer. But
Yeah, it is. It is a tough question to answer because probably when I came into Sydney, I was already working with the players. I've been there a number of years. Look, I think there's talent there, but when until you can actually see the players work and how they respond, and I mean, we're going to have a significant change in game style. It's going to be significant. How long are the players going to take to? Look, I think they're a coachable group. And I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe they were coachable. I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe they'd work hard. And that's the feedback I've got from Dave and from Peter and from Glenn and a number of other people. So I think we've got a good group. But it's going to be a significant change for them. How long will that take? I don't know. And all I can do is give a commitment that we'll work as hard as we possibly can and put a game style in place that I believe eventually will be successful, and hope the players embrace it quickly, and then we'll get out there and have a red-hot go.
Will there be a bit of a change for you, Paul, as well in your game style? Because obviously at Sydney you had the players to be able to play that defensive type of style that seems to suit your thinking as a coach. Do you believe you've got those players to...
Yeah, probably more that transition. I mean, we just need I think if you look at the Swans midfield now, and I'll use them because I know them, but if you look at Freo, I mean, it's not a lockdown defensive. It doesn't have to be a lockdown defensive style where you've got 4 or 5 taggers or anything like that. I think what we need to teach the guys and what Sydney do better than any other team is that defensive transition running hard up and back, AFL's a tough game if you want to be successful, and we'll train to be successful, and we'll have a game style that stands up over a period of time. As I said, it's not going to happen overnight. There's no magic formula and there's no magic fix. But we'll have a game style that hopefully will stack up.
Will you finish your media commitments, or are you out?
No, I've got an obligation, and I think Peter's comfortable. I mean, I enjoy sitting with Mike and Jared. I might be able to wear this on Monday night. Get the new sponsor a bit of publicity as well, which will be good. No, and I've got a game on Sunday to do, Richmond versus Carlton. So, I'll continue those obligations until the end of the year.
is this the biggest challenge of your life?
My life? Look, I actually see it as much as a leadership challenge as it is a coaching challenge. And probably that's, as I said, as bad, the worse it sort of sounded, the more interest I got. Because, look, I'm aware it's going to be difficult. I'm aware of that. And people are we'll be judged eventually on wins and losses and how we present ourselves as a footy team. But it's exciting. It is a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. I guess I see it as the sort of last hurrah and then right off into the sunset. I probably thought that with the Swans. But look, there's no doubt it's a challenge. But as I say, I've got a real, I've known the boys for very long, but I've got confidence enough in the 8 or 9 boys that were there that they'll at least listen and learn. And it's just going to be how quickly we can execute it. What is the talent level within the team? We need to get some midfielders. So look, there's a lot of challenges. There's no question about that. It's not an easy job, but it's an exciting job.
Paul, have you missed being a head coach? And we saw yesterday at the Eagles with John Warshall wanting a year off. He's run out of energy. Do you think it's important as well that senior coaches like yourself have a year off, or more than a year off, get away from the game, and then come back to be as rejuvenated and as pumped up as you are at the moment?
Look, I can only speak for myself. Look, it's 8 years is a long time, 8.5 years, 12 years for John is a long time as well. You do have to have energy. I think the roles changed though over, certainly over my time and certainly over John's time. I think we're looking at a new frontier of coaching and what coaches are. I think coaches now are more managers, and as I said, we'll get a high quality senior assistant. We'll get some real good development coaches and so forth. So I think it's more of a leadership role now and a mentoring role and culture and all those sorts of things. So I suppose probably because it has changed. I mean, that's why I'm sitting here, because I really enjoy the challenge of doing those things. Sometimes the grind of the everyday coaching, but you've got 5 or 6 or 7 other guys that can do that, can share the workload. But certainly from a leadership point of view, after 3 years out of it, I'm really looking forward to getting back into it.
Peter, what sort of effect does Paul's appointment have financially on the club?
Look, I'd be fibbing if I said it wasn't a consideration compared to what another senior coach might have been. I thought I sort of tried to answer that a bit to Roger's question, that I think it'll have a significant impact. I hope those 12,000 members, what Paul's not guaranteeing great immediate on-field success, but what his track record and his credibility offer is, perhaps to use an unfortunate word, the spin that this footy club's put around likely success over the last 4 or 5 years. I think people will believe now. I think there's nothing worse than talking yourself up and then not delivering. And I think that's probably why those 12,000 members have walked away. I reckon they'll come back, a lot of them, and a lot of them will come back on faith of this man. A few of them will come back a bit later when they see some results, but it's the credibility and the trust in the organisation that I think Roosy brings, and so that obviously will have a commercial impact on this organisation.
Thanks, guys. We'll head down to the service. Thank you.